At 2:17 in the morning, my roommate fell asleep beside me on the couch, and for the first time in months, her face looked completely peaceful. I almost smiled as I pulled the blanket over her shoulders. Then her phone lit up on the floor. I wasn't trying to look. I swear I wasn't. But one message appeared across the screen, and the words froze me in place. Please don't tell her the truth. She'll leave if she finds out. My heart began pounding because there was only one person in that apartment who could be me. Before I continue, if stories about kindness, second chances, hidden struggles, and the people who quietly save us when we need it most mean something to you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to True Kindness Stories for more emotional stories about second chances. My name is Emily, and when I first met Nora, I thought she was simply the quiet roommate who preferred tea over coffee and slept with the bedroom window slightly open even during winter. We had been sharing a small apartment for almost 8 months. We weren't best friends, but we had become comfortable around each other. We knew when the other needed silence, when groceries were running low, and when one of us had a terrible day. Still, there was always something distant about Nora. She smiled often, but her smile never quite reached her eyes. The strange thing was that she had become increasingly tired during the last few weeks. She would come home late, remove her shoes by the door, and sit silently at the kitchen table as if she had forgotten where she was. Sometimes I would ask if everything was okay, and she would quickly say yes. Other nights, I noticed her staring at her phone with tears in her eyes before wiping them away and pretending nothing had happened. I wanted to push her to tell me what was wrong, but I knew what it felt like when someone asked questions you weren't ready to answer. I had been struggling too. After losing my job unexpectedly, I was trying to keep up with rent while sending applications to every company that would answer me. My savings were disappearing faster than I wanted to admit. There were nights when I pretended I wasn't hungry because I didn't want Nora to notice I had skipped dinner. Somehow, she always noticed. She began leaving extra food in the refrigerator, claiming she had cooked too much. I knew she hadn't. One rainy evening, I came home completely exhausted after another unsuccessful interview. I found Nora sitting on the floor near the balcony, surrounded by unopened letters. She looked terrified. When she noticed me, she quickly gathered them and shoved them into a drawer. I didn't ask. Instead, I quietly made 2 cups of tea and sat beside her. For almost 20 minutes, neither of us spoke. Sometimes kindness isn't asking someone to explain their pain. Sometimes it's simply refusing to leave them alone with it. That night, Nora finally admitted that she was having financial problems. Her mother was seriously struggling with medical bills, and Nora had been secretly sending most of her paycheck home. She was working extra shifts and barely sleeping. She had borrowed money from several places and was terrified she would lose everything. I told her she didn't have to carry it alone. She laughed softly and said she already had. Over the next few weeks, we became closer. I found a temporary job at a small bookstore, and although the pay wasn't much, it helped. Nora kept working herself to exhaustion. I began noticing little things she tried to hide, the way her hands trembled when she opened messages, the way she sometimes stood outside the apartment before entering, taking deep breaths as though preparing herself for bad news. Then came the night of the text. We had been watching an old movie on the couch when Nora suddenly fell asleep. She looked completely drained. I lowered the volume and pulled a blanket over her. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed on the carpet. Seconds later, the screen illuminated. Please don't tell her the truth. She'll leave if she finds out. I stared at those words for several seconds. My first thought was betrayal. My second was fear. Had she been hiding something about me? Was she planning to move out? Had she discovered something about my past? My mind created 100 terrible possibilities. Then another notification appeared. I promised her I'd never tell her what happened to her father. I stopped breathing. My father had died when I was 16. At least, that was what I had always believed. My mother had told me he abandoned the family, and for years I had carried anger toward a man I thought had simply chosen another life. But Nora knew almost nothing about my family. I looked at her sleeping face and felt ashamed for even reading the messages. I could have woken her. I could have demanded answers. Instead, I put the phone exactly where it had been and went to my bedroom. The next morning, Nora found me sitting at the kitchen table. I told her I had accidentally seen the message. Her face lost all color. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Then she told me the truth. My father had not abandoned us. Years ago, he had been diagnosed with a serious illness and had secretly taken on extra work to pay for treatment. He eventually became too sick to continue. He had asked Nora's mother, who had worked with him, to help him contact my mother because he wanted to see me one last time. But before that could happen, he died. Nora had discovered the truth months earlier because her mother had kept old letters and photographs. She had been trying to find the courage to tell me, but her mother begged her not to. She was afraid the truth would destroy me. I felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath me. All those years of believing my father didn't love me suddenly collapsed. I cried harder than I had cried since his funeral. Nora didn't try to explain anything else. She simply sat beside me and held my hand. Then she gave me an old envelope. Inside was a letter written by my father. His handwriting was uneven, but I recognized it immediately. He wrote that he was sorry. He wrote that if I ever read the letter, I should never believe that leaving was his choice. He wrote that every day he had fought to stay alive because he wanted to watch me grow up. He said he was proud of me before I had accomplished anything at all. At the bottom, he had written one sentence that broke me completely: if life ever makes you feel unwanted, remember that you were the reason I kept fighting. For months, I had thought I was carrying my life alone. I had believed my father had abandoned me and that Nora was hiding something because she didn't trust me. But the truth was painfully different. Nora had been carrying a secret because she was trying to protect my heart. That day changed both of us. I helped Nora organize her mother's medical bills, and together we found assistance programs that could reduce some of the pressure. She stopped taking unnecessary extra shifts. I kept working at the bookstore while applying for better jobs. Slowly, our lives began rebuilding themselves. Months later, I finally found a stable job. Nora's mother began recovering. Our little apartment no longer felt like two strangers sharing rent. It felt like home. One evening, Nora and I sat on the same couch where everything had begun. She smiled and said that she had been afraid I would hate her after discovering the truth. I told her something I wished someone had told me years earlier: sometimes love looks like honesty, and sometimes it looks like staying beside someone until they're strong enough to hear the truth. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes they have to face everything alone, and subscribe to True Kindness Stories. Your support helps these stories reach people who may desperately need their message of hope. And before you go, I want to ask you something special. Comment, "I choose kindness," if you believe that sometimes the people hiding the truth aren't trying to hurt us, they're simply trying to protect a heart they love. I still keep my father's letter beside my bed. And whenever life becomes difficult, I read that final sentence again. I no longer wonder whether I was loved. I know I was. I know my father fought for me. I know Nora stayed when she could have walked away. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the greatest second chance isn't getting your old life back. It's finally understanding that you were never as alone as you thought you were.